The failures so much too great for us that it overshadows the successes they actually recorded as CBN governor?
Well, I'll say that the successes are ephemeral, quite honestly, because if you haven't been able to achieve your prime mandate, the prime reason you are created, okay, then you have failed. And the kind of successes you're talking about are in fact contradictory. Why? Because you'll probably be looking in terms of, oh, the banks are, you can pay your money here and get it there, and cashless society and XYZ. I mean, unfortunately, all this process of cashless implementation is antagonistic to what do I call price stability, because you already had inflation at a rate of about 8%. If you now have a situation where, because of the cashless thing, there is a higher circulation of money. A higher circulation of money can only drive inflation. So you praise him for this cashless thing, but in reality, a sensible person would not have jumped at that time, because it is contradictory to achieving his prime mandate of price stability. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying cashless society is bad. Okay, but I'm saying that you wouldn't choose the option of price stability, which would drive velocity of circulation of money and drive inflation at a time that you're having a problem with inflation.
But let me quickly remind you, remember when he took over as a CBN governor, the first thing he did was to sanitize the banking industry. Mr. Onebu, we're going to come to you on this. That's what he did. And from then on, it seemed as if everything became a little rosy, at least where the banks were concerned. And a lot of people are not thinking about that. They're not even remembering that right now in terms of criticizing all the policies that he's actually come up with during his tenure as a CBN governor.
Honestly, yesterday I commended him for bringing sanity to the banks, because I remember I left a bank where a lot of things, people were just messing up the way they like. But I tell you one thing, the mistake most regulators make, I keep asking the question in one of the books that said, who regulates the regulator? And we regulate them from what we are saying here. You, in the media, regulate them from your comments. But unfortunately, when they get there, they forget the mandate from which they are sitting there. They don't read the rules, they don't read what is happening, and then they stay there and nobody challenges them. I tell you, the banks that were sanitized, when you are speaking with some of the MDs of these banks privately, they tell you they don't like what the CBN governor is saying, but they will not have the courage to be able to say, in their meeting, no, Mr. Governor, we cannot do this. I remember the time of Joseph Sanusi, and when the Bodage was the MD of NDS, and we used to tell them, no, you cannot do this. And before they come up with any policy, they will call around those who will probably challenge them to say, I'm coming up with this, what do you think? And you talk to them. That consultation is very important. I think that's why we lost it. But I must say something. I think we are misinforming the public so much. I think I want to correct that here. You see, let me talk as a lawyer now, because Sanusi is still the governor of the central bank.
Even though suspended?
Even though suspended. And you have to look at something. You see, there are some cases, most lawyers are just looking at this thing from the periphery. There is this case of Shita Bay against Federal Public Service Commission, where he was removed and he went to court, and it was stated, because there, you have a master-servant relationship. You have the master that is based, master-servant is based on contract. There's the one where the master can decide and throw it out any time, and there's the one which we call colored with statutory flavor, which is where Sanusi comes in. Right?
Colored with statutory flavor.
Statutory flavor. In other words, is a statutory is appointment whose, when you get there, it is governed by the law of the National Assembly. That is the type where Sanusi belongs.
Okay.
And if you, they keep talking about this section 11 and all that. And I remember a case too, CBN against Igbilo, where this issue of statutory flavor came up, and when you suspend, the Supreme Court said within 1 month you have gone through what you have, for which those infractions you observed, and they made the other recall, you must sack him if you find him guilty. So what is disturbing is the time when the time of this suspension is a little bit not very clean as far as I'm concerned. I mean, there should have been, it should have been done 2 years ago, left to me, because from what he's saying. Because there are certain things as the central bank governor you don't need to do. He did very well, but my friend was so loquacious about everything he did. He talked too much, That is not a qualification of a central bank governor. A central bank governor is somebody that is very conservative, does things and he can achieve. Like Mr. Dawood just said, all that he did them very well, but in a wrong fashion.
So if he goes to court now, and then the court decides that this suspension was actually a wrong one, and he says he's not interested in coming back, as Mr. Sanusi, he's not interested in coming back to finishing his tenure. What does this now mean for the next person who's going to come in to be the CBN governor?
Honestly, I don't see anything wrong with or anything for any of them. If he goes to court now, the fact, is he going to say he's removed as CBN governor? That's the question. What are you going to say?
That he was suspended.
He was suspended. Does suspension mean he had been sacked? No. I'm sure it will be a very good legal thing. But if I was the government, you see, the government also have their own problems. When you see some of these little things that the law did not provide, because there's this thing called interpretation of the law, right? If you are confused, all that the government could have done is to approach the Supreme Court or Court of Appeal to interpret this for us. And nobody does that. But I'll be happy if he goes to court because it will help. So at the next person coming. And I want to also display this fact that if you go to work in a place, you don't need to be afraid. But you must know that you are going to do certain things right through consultation. There's a board of the central bank. And this is an issue where most people, if you talk to some members of the board, they say, this thing, they are not aware this is happening. But I question them, you sit there, just collect allowance, and you don't ask questions. I will leave, I will resign from such a board if I'm not allowed to ask questions. So these are some of the infractions. Nigeria is a problem in itself. So let us look at some of the things.
Why would you say that?
Yeah, because most of us, when we get into positions, we forget where we are coming from. We forget the rule of governing the organization. And these things are in the area of corporate governance. So
it's not Nigerians it's not Nigeria that has a problem. It's individuals, Nigerians that have the problem. I just wanted to let us clear that.
So let me allow you to say that.
Well, that's what it is. Mr. Boyo, this one is for you. I just got this tweet from one of our viewers, Sani Ozovehe. He says, what are the prime mandates of the CBN? That according to him, strong banking regulations, limited financial risk, exchange rate stability, single-digit inflation, and Mr. Boyo says Lamido Sanusi has not achieved his mandate. I disagree.
Well, put it this way: the prime mandate of the central bank must be price stability, and the degree of price stability required as a pass mark must be able to drive the economy. Now, I ask you, has this present framework of 24% interest rate and 8% inflation, has that driven the economy? The answer is no. So if you are scoring on a pass-fail sort of basis, since he has not achieved that, he has failed. In the area of regulation, I think we are given a little bit too much kudos in retrospect, because a person who cannot handle his figures, or we cannot rely on the figures that he has been working with, especially from the vantage position of a central bank governor who can flip-flop from 49 to 10 to 12 to 20. Maybe the same inconsistencies or misjudgments, in fact, were applied in the area of banking sanitation. Maybe some of the things we had him say and the types of decisions he took must be re-examined under this perspective of a person who is very rash in making decisions and making pronouncements. We really have to look at all that again. But having said so, the issue of regulation is not primary in the functions of the central bank. It is required, it is necessary, yes, but the prime mandate as specified in the first two sentences of the Central Bank Act is price stability. So you cannot tell me to go and do a degree in medicine and you want to judge me on the basis of economics. You know, that's not it. The important thing is that a central bank is supposed to drive the economy with best practice in price stability, and that means low interest rates that can make it possible for Harriet, for example, not to be worried that in 10 years' time or in 20 years' time or whatever, when you are retired, your pension being paid does not mean anything. That is why inflation at 8% or so cannot be a success when looked at over a period of 8 to 10 years, because it means that every 8 to 10 years, the value of your currency or the value of your income, it becomes totally meaningless. So that cannot be a success. In the area of interest rates, all countries in the world, whenever they want to drive their economy, what they do is, of course, they lower the interest rate so that people, the small-scale industrialists and all of them, can access funds readily, even long-term funds at single lower-digit interest rates. So if you are not able to do that, according to, as a central bank governor, again, you have failed. So I don't see how you can define success of a central bank's governor's job without considering whether they did well in the area of driving the economy, creating employment opportunities and things like that. But if you now want to say, but what of the other side? And you say, but the central bank governor has come in front of you and confessed that he unknowingly, as I say, foolishly, has been giving money to the banks and borrowing the money back. He himself admitted that this was a foolish arrangement. But the point is, how long has this been going on? How long have you been giving government money to the banks and borrowing it back? That itself is, if you are aware of it, it can be interpreted as fraud. So you have to be very, very careful in saying success here, success there. Success are measured according to the parameters of the job.
Okay, so when we come back, we're actually going to